Hi, if you're new here, welcome. I'm Kathy. I love quilting and I've got a little fall table runner project to share with you today. So this table runner is actually just a simple Irish chain pattern. I've actually sewn almost the exact same thing, just in a different color set, back in March of this year. I'll put a link to that video in the show notes so you can go check it out. But it's essentially the same process and the same pattern as that one I did in March. I'm just using some different colors, which really make this Irish chain look completely different than the one before. This one's also a little bit smaller, but other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. All right, let's get started. So here are the colors that I chose for this project. I did try to find colors that were similar to fall leaf colors. All right, so here's the colors. These are all Bella Solids. This is Harvest Gold, Rust, and Natural. So just 3 different colors for this project. And we don't need very much fabric to make this. This is a pretty small table runner. And here are the fabric requirements. Alright, so essentially this quilt is made up of squares and tiny squares. But we're going to make the tiny squares a lot easier because we're going to sew them in sets of strips and then cut them up so they're not such tiny pieces to work with. And to cut this, the first thing I need to do is I'm going to cut the 3.5-inch squares from each of the colors. Since those are the biggest piece, I'd like to usually start with the biggest. And I'm going to need from the Harvest Gold and the Rust, I'm going to need 10 squares, 3.5 inches from each of these colors. And then from the white, I'm going to need 12 of the 3.5-inch squares. And then we'll cut our strips that we're going to use to make those smaller square sets. So with this one, since I needed a 1/4 yard, and I do have the traditional length cut of a 1/4 yard, not a fat quarter, I'm going to then just fold this over so I can cut a bunch at the same time. And I'm going to start with a clean edge. I think my blade's getting a little dull. And then I'm just going to turn it. And using that clean edge as my guide, I'm going to cut a 3.5-inch strip. And I need 10 squares. Let me just make sure I can get 10 out of here since this is 4 thick. I have plenty here for those squares, so I'm just going to get a clean edge. And then I'm going to cut my 10 3.5-inch squares. I'm actually going to cut probably 12 because there's 4 layers here and I'm going to do this 3 times. I can save those other ones for a project down the road. Okay, set those aside. Then since I have this already nicely folded, I'm going to go ahead and cut the strips I need. We're going to cut our strips into 1.5 inches wide, the length of the fabric. And for the Harvest Gold, we need a total of 3 strips. Okay, now my Harvest colors should all be cut for now. And then from the Rust, again, I've got this folded over. I'm going to get a clean edge. And I also need 10 3.5-inch squares from the Rust. And since I'm right here, I'm just going to go ahead and cut the strips that I need that are 1.5 inches. And from the Rust, I need a total of 5 strips. And don't forget to cut those 3.5-inch squares, and we need 10 of them again from the Rust. Set those aside. And finally from our natural color here, same thing. Start with the 3.5-inch squares, and I need 12 from the natural. And from the natural, I'm going to need a total of 6 1.5-inch strips. Natural leftover for a future project. So now we're going to sew our strip sets. So for the Rust, we need to pair 2 Rust up with a white. So I'm taking 2 of my Rust strips for their entire length, and then 1 of the white. And I'm actually going to need 1 and a half sets of these, because if my math is correct, there isn't quite enough with just one of these width of fabric sets for the blocks I need. So then I'm going to take another rust strip and I'm going to cut this in half. And then I'm going to just create my half set of strips that way. So 2 rust, and then same with the white, I'm going to take one of those and cut that in half. Now I'm not measuring it because I'm just cutting out the fold from the seam of the fabric. And I'm going to pair that with this. So these are going to be 2 of my rust sets, and then I've got another set of the rust ones for that little middle square that's surrounded by white. So that's going to be 1 rust strip and then surrounded by 2 white strips. And just like before, that's not quite enough, so I'm going to take another white strip. This one I'm going to cut in half. And I'm going to take my last rust strip and cut that in half as well and create another set that's half of the length. And then I need my Harvest Gold. I need 2 of my Harvest Gold strips and a natural strip, or white. And I'm going to take that half of the white I had from before, and I'm going to cut this last one in half. And then I'll have my half set as well. Alright, I'm just going to sew these sets together then, and I'm going to use a scant 1/4 inch for my seam allowance. Okay, when I'm sewing these, I'm not going to pin these strips together. I'm just going to kind of align them as I go and then adjust as I need to. And I'm going to use a scant 1/4 inch on these seams. Okay, I've got all of my sets sewn together, and I did press the seams open. I found with these small pieces that for me the seams being open just helps them lie a little bit flatter. Alright, from each set now we need to subcut these, and we're going to subcut each of the color combinations into 31 sections that are 1.5 inches in width. And I'm going to just start by getting a nice straight edge, and then I'll start cutting. And if you find as you're cutting these, you tend to get a little bit less straight as you go, just give yourself a nice clean edge again and you should be just fine. There's plenty of wiggle room in these sets, so if you need to straighten up a few times, you probably will have plenty and you'll be just fine. Okay, so I've got all of my pieces cut, and you will have a little bit left over that you could save for another project. So once you have your pieces cut, so we're just going to sew each of these combinations together to create these little 9-patch squares. So each of your sets should have 3 of the rust squares and 2 of the Harvest Gold squares. And I'm going to sew these using a 1/4 inch scant seam allowance. So as I'm sewing these pieces, I am just lining up the seams on these little squares. And then I'm just going to do 2 of the sides for all of the sets at once, just going one right after another, creating this long daisy chain of little pieces. And then once I have all these pieces on, I'll come back and sew the 3rd piece for each of these little 9 patches. Okay, so I've got all of my little 9 patches done, and now let me show you how we're going to put this together. So we're going to bring back our 3.5 squares from earlier, and the first row is going to start with the rust, and then we're going to take one of our 9 patches and we're going to line the rust color with the rust black, and then we're going to take our Harvest Gold and another one of our 9 patches, and we're lining the Harvest Gold with the Harvest Gold black, and another rust, another 9 patch, same thing, colors match each other on those little 9 patches, and then we're going to finish with the Harvest Gold. And then for the next row, we're going to start with a 9 patch, and again we want to match the colors for the black that's right next to it. Then we're going to take our natural color, then another little 9 patch, and I'm going to match up that Harvest Gold to the top row here. Another one of our natural blacks, another little 9 patch, natural, and finally another little 9 patch. Okay, and then on the next row we're going to start with the Harvest Square. Get our 9 patch here, we're going to line up the Harvest Gold on those little 9 patches. And then we're going to take a rust square, 9 patch again, lining up the rust color. Another rust, another little 9 patch here, and finishing with the rust. And then again with our little 9 patch, a natural, 9 patch, and I'm always lining up the colors, and then a natural, a 9 patch, a natural. So this is pretty much the pattern that's going to be created the rest of the table runner. And I'll show you that graphic image so you can see what all the rows look like. And we'll have 9 total rows, and there's 7 total blocks in each of the rows. All right, I'm going to keep sewing this, but stick around because I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's all done. And here is the completed quilt. I actually didn't end up adding a binding because I didn't feel like this little table runner needed it. I ended up instead just sewing this so I could turn the quilt inside out and then have that finished edge. And I didn't even quilt it because I figured I didn't really need it. So I hope that you liked this video. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and visit us at DelafieldQuiltCo.com. Have a wonderful day.